For a man who accomplished so much in pro football, Bobby Mitchell was often in the wrong place at the wrong time. He was the first African American to play for the Washington Redskins, so he had to outrun controversy even as he outran the competition. And as a rookie in Cleveland, he was caught between the dueling egos of Jim Brown, number 32, and head coach Paul Brown.
How would you describe your role between you had one of the greatest coaches and the greatest players, and you had a unique role in that team when you were with the Browns?
Well, it was frightening and it was hell. Paul would use me to push Jim, he thought. Jim didn't need pushing, but he would come to me just before the kickoff and would say, Bobby, I want you to take this kickoff. He said, get it out there, and get the big man going. In other words, he felt that any time that I would look good, that would inspire Jim to go, and which was true. So in those cases, he would try to motivate me and Jim. That private competition between Jim and I, he knew would always inspire him to do something else, and which was true.
Jim always wanted to race Bobby Mitchell. You know, he, come on, Bobby, we'll go. You know, well, Bobby knew that Jim could not run him, so he just said, oh, that's okay. You know, you're the best.
Jim didn't respect you unless you were a great athlete. I always knew I was a great athlete because I always knew he respected my football.
Mitchell was 6 feet tall and 190 pounds of breakaway speed. He once held the world indoor record in the low hurdles. He was passed over in the 1958 draft because most scouts felt his goal was to compete in the Olympics, not the NFL. Paul Brown took him in the 7th round and was glad he did.
Bobby did such a great job of catching screen passes, you know, and with his elusiveness, making the first guy miss. And then once the first guy missed, who knows, it was going 80 yards. And we had more 80-yard screen passes to Bobby, I think, than any team in history. So much so that Modell went before the competition committee. And he wanted, because of Bobby, any pass that's completed behind the line of scrimmage to go on the rushing stats. He said, well, it's not beyond the line of scrimmage, you know, so it should be like a rush.
1959, you're playing the Redskins. It's the third quarter, and you had accumulated 232 yards rushing, 5 yards away from the all-time record at that time, which was held by Jim Brown, of 237 yards in a game. The third quarter, what happened?
I didn't even know anything about the record. Here I am playing, and I didn't even know what the record was. Someone had sent a note down from up in the box at where I was in terms of yardage.
That you were 5 yards away from the all-time record.
Yeah, and the players began to tell Paul, Bobby only needs 5 yards for the record, Paul. Put him in. Immediately, Paul Brown started pulling back on handing me the ball. Up to that time, he was just feeding me. And then he just took me out. First, he said he wanted to save me for the next game. Then he said, we don't care about records.
You think that would have been a good motivating factor for Jim, though? If you'd have broke Jim Brown's record, you think that Jim Brown would have gone out the next...
Jim would have went out the next game and got 300 yards. I think about it in terms of money. He didn't like the idea that I probably would have to walk in there and say, yeah, I think I should get more money, which I did anyway because I had a tremendous year.
Brown and Mitchell were a productive combination, but Paul Brown saw Vince Lombardi win championships with two big backs in Paul Hornung and Jim Taylor. Brown wanted to duplicate that by pairing Syracuse star Ernie Davis, number 44, with Jim Brown. He traded Mitchell to Washington to acquire the rights to Davis, but Davis died of leukemia before he could ever play a game in the NFL.
I had just settled in to a life in Cleveland, and all of a sudden someone is saying, get out of here, you know, and so it wasn't so much Washington. It wasn't until later that I said, whoa, I'm going to the Washington Redskins, of all places?
The Redskins were the last all-white team in the NFL. Mitchell knew it would be hard fitting in, especially after meeting owner George Preston Marshall at the kickoff luncheon.
I think we're getting ready to sing the national anthem or something When they stand up, boy, and all of a sudden there's, I wish I was, and I'm looking around.
Singing Dixie, right?
Yeah. Everybody just singing at the top of their voices. And I know that Mr. Marshall's behind me, and after a while, boy, this booming voice said, "Sing, Bobby, sing!" And I said, I didn't even know the song.
There was a tremendous burden on him at that time. I mean, you know, the fight song, even Hail to the Redskins said, and for old Dixie. It didn't say for old DC. That was changed later. So they were playing to the South, and that must have been awful tough for him.
How did the African-American community react to you?
I was a shining light. As I was what they had been waiting for. Therefore, I could make no mistakes. I had to be the perfect Superman each game, which is impossible. So I caught a lot of devil from the blacks. Bobby Mitchell had to be perfect. And that didn't just end after the first year. That went on and on. I went from practice home. I didn't go from practice downtown to a restaurant or to clubs. I went practice, home, practice. I was a hostage. I would have loved to have just been able to go out and play football. The things you go through to get to Sunday was just hell. I just want to play. I was that first. I had upset the apple cart. I had put the emotions out there, and people just don't forget that. I had an interesting thing happen to me just within this past year. I had an old gentleman to walk up to me, and he put his finger up in front of me, and he said, you know, I never liked you. And I said, what did I do? He said, well, you came here so high and mighty, and you just upset us the way you handle yourself. What did I do? And he couldn't tell me what I did, just that he didn't like me. But he softened it by, at the end, he said, but you were a good football player. You were a good football player. I said, thank you. That's all I wanted to be.
Bobby Mitchell joined a Redskin team that won only one game in 1961. Coach Bill McPeak had to maximize his new weapon.
He said, you know, I really don't have much of an offensive line. Well, I already knew that. And he said, I got a pretty good quarterback, though, in Norm Snead. He said, what do you think about going outside as a receiver? I said, okay. He didn't have to ask me twice.
The Redskins put their top offseason acquisition to work. Norm Snead hurls the ball to Bobby Mitchell, who's behind everybody for an 81-yard TD play.
Mitchell had a great season, highlighted by a dramatic return to Cleveland.
Paul Brown was very nervous about my return to Cleveland for the first game. For 3 quarters, I never touched a football. Bill and I was talking on the sideline. I said, Bill, you know, what about putting me in the backfield?
You're talking about Bill McPeak?
Bill McPeak. And see if I could I just need to get the ball in my hands. They're keeping me from even touching the football. So we did. We go into the backfield. 4th quarter, I mean, it was late in the game.
Less than 2 minutes remain. Norm Snead goes back to pass. He hit Bobby Mitchell over the center, and watch the ex-Brownie turn it on for his old coach and teammates.
I started for Paul Brown on the sideline. He was right at the bench. And this is honest truth. I'm looking at Jim Brown and Wooten, my buddies, all standing on the sideline. And I'm looking right at them.
And I'm trying to figure out, where is he going? You know, where is he going?
When I get at the sideline, I immediately made a right turn. And I don't, to this day, know how I made that turn, because it was like fists, you know.
And I tell you could see mud flying up from his heels. He was flying.
Out of the corner of my eye, I am still looking at Paul Brown, Jim Brown, and Wooten as they're turning, walking back towards the bench, because they know I'm gone.
A real sparkler and sweet revenge for Bobby Mitchell.
And, of course, Paul went crazy in the locker room. He went totally crazy. He couldn't believe, of all the guys to come back and beat him, you let Bobby Mitchell come back. Oh, he went wild.
That season, Mitchell led the NFL with 72 pass receptions for 1,384 yards and 11 touchdowns. He was a dazzling combination of world-class speed and halfback elusiveness, which made him almost impossible to catch in the open field. In 7 seasons with the Redskins, Mitchell was All-Pro 3 times. When he retired in 1969, his 14,078 total yards ranked second in NFL history, behind only Jim Brown. As one of the most celebrated athletes in the nation's capital, Mitchell got to know many influential figures of the 1960s.
Did you ever have any occasion to meet Martin Luther King?
I only was around him one time, and I noticed he kept staring at me. You know, you feel funny, people kind of staring at you, and we talking, but yet he's staring at me. He finally said, you go out there, I thought you were bigger than that, and you out there with all those big guys, because he was a little guy, you know. And now here's a man who just got out of jail. I'm looking at him saying, man, you doing all that stuff? And I'm thinking, I didn't go where you went. I couldn't handle that. And he said, well, you must understand, those of us who are fighting, we don't get anything. It was good he told me that, because I found that in the years after that all my fights...
And your fight was what? What would, to say...
Advancement.
For African Americans?
For Afro-Americans in our game.
Did you ever find yourself involved in politics as the years went on?
I tried to run from it as much as possible, but Bobby Kennedy reached and grabbed me. He and I became fast friends, looked like overnight. Did
you play in any of those legendary touch football games with the Kennedys?
Yeah, I've heard about how legendary these games were. There wasn't much of anything to me. Pretty lousy stuff. But yeah, we get out there and throw the ball around. With me, he was almost like the blacks in Washington. You got to be perfect. If somebody threw me a harbor ball, you know, and I didn't catch it, he over there kicking me in the behind, you know. Catch that ball, you don't miss balls. I said, I'm not playing with you guys. But yeah, it was fun. He kept me busy. We'd go off to high schools and playgrounds and all that, kids, and he loved that type of thing. And I'd be down at the Justice Department all the time. You would have thought that I was in the cabinet. I was all over the place, and I never was comfortable in the sense that I always felt that we should have the Secret Service guys with us at all times, and he didn't like that. And I'd tell him, I said, "Boy, we need to have the guys with us," you know? To the point that I was getting so nervous about it that I was contemplating not being with him at times. And I had made up my mind that I was not going to California. I was frightened. I told my wife, I told Gwen, I said, I'm not going to California. She said, well, Bobby's going to be upset if, you know, you're not going.
That's because you were concerned about the...
I just was concerned that the things that I saw and the things I heard, there's something wrong here. On the one hand, people are nuts about him. On the other hand, there's that pocket that hates him. And I felt the best thing I could do was to call out and tell some of the guys, Rhodes Greer and those guys, to look after him, you know, when he get to California. But to be sitting at my home and see him assassinated, and knowing I would have been right there in the middle of it, I should have been with him. And I felt almost like I betrayed him. I wasn't there. I couldn't have done anything. I might have got shot. I don't know. But that association from the day we met till his assassination was just fantastic. I just had a marvelous time.
Bobby Mitchell played for or worked with 4 Hall of Fame coaches. Each left an indelible impression.
When I think of Paul Brown, Coach Lombardi, George Allen, Joe Gibbs, all those great coaches, they're the same guys with a slightly different philosophy. Paul Brown was very subtle and played to your pride. Jim Brown, Bednarik, can't wait to get in your chest because he don't believe you're as great as they say you are. Lombardi, Jim Brown You better not let him tackle you. You don't let anybody tackle you. George Allen, Jim, you know what to do. And to help you do it, for every yard you run, I'm going to give you $5. Joe Gibbs, I just don't think that anybody can beat us. We know what to do, but we're not doing it. They come at you a little different, but all of it is playing to your pride. And I was fortunate to be around 4 great ones.
When Mitchell retired as a player, Coach Vince Lombardi put him to work in the Redskins personnel department.
I walked away from the football field and was a top scout overnight. That I knew how to go to places, how to get things done, how to work with coaches in colleges and get players.
He had a great eye for talent. He worked hard at it. He did the reports, he did the scouting, and uncovered quite a few sleeper-type guys who the gems in the 4th, the 5th, the 12th, the 14th round.
Working alongside George Allen, Mitchell helped find the players that led to 7 consecutive winning seasons. And his prestige in Washington reached even greater heights with his election to the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1983.
His stature, it was immense. I mean, he was a very popular guy. He lived in the city. He knew everybody. Everybody knew him. He was a Washingtonian. He became a Washingtonian as an institution. He was revered, well-respected, and that's the good news. The bad news is that he was buried pretty much ever since the Jack Kent Cooke regime, which started in the late 70s. Bobby, from there on in, was relegated to doing other things, whether it be traveling secretary for the club and also the out front face of the Redskins in the community. If you had a charity dinner, you'd call the Redskins and Bobby Mitchell would come. And that's pretty much what he's been doing for most of the last 22 years.
How long were you with Washington? Almost 40 years, right?
40, yeah, 41.
Len Shapiro was saying that, you know, even if you wanted to leave, you couldn't have left because you were an icon, you were an institution. Do you feel that way?
Yeah. No, I was locked into Washington 30 years ago. I just kept my ears open. And owners and general managers and people, when it came to discussions of me, some people said, wow, you're a Redskin 40 years? It doesn't surprise me. I was a Redskin 40 years because there was nothing else I could be. No one would allow me to be anything else but a Redskin.
This is a guy who was so far ahead of his time in the beginning, you know, when he started doing this, and could have been a pioneer at the next level, you know, in the front office. He should have been the first black general manager. No question in my mind, he could do it. He would do it well. He would never talk about it publicly, very rarely would talk about it privately. He never wanted to openly criticize, but it was very obvious to those of us who knew him for most of the last 30 years that he would have preferred to have been given more opportunity in the organization.
He did every single thing, going at it the right way, with the idea that when Bobby Better would leave, he would be the guy. And they didn't give him the job, you know, and that cut him and that hurt him deeply. But he swallowed hard. He didn't go ranting, raging, hooping and hollering, and he kept working with the idea that he would get the job eventually, and they never gave him the job.
I've been able to handle all the brouhaha about why aren't you a general manager, why aren't you a head coach, and all those type of things. It wasn't for me. And I have never, ever fought for that for me. And it came from that one discussion with Martin. And I believed him, and he was right.
This is Martin Luther King.
Yeah, we don't get anything. The people behind us, they get the opportunities. We get nothing. But all around you, people are going to get something, and that's where your satisfaction have to come from. And that's where my satisfaction has come from all these many years.
You were talking about Lombardi talked you into staying in the front office when you were going to leave football. And he said to you, work hard and you'll be noticed. And then you said that Lombardi lied to you.
He said, you've got to stay. I said, Coach, I don't want any part of this. He said, "Oh, you got to stay in. You can't leave and win, you know." And I said, "Coach, are you telling me that I can be a head coach one day?" Now, we're talking about 1969. There ain't no blacks anywhere. And he looked at me, and he started screaming at me, "What do you mean? You can be whatever you want to be. You can, you know." Well, you don't even have to coach. You come in the front office with me, okay? And then I said to him, "Coach, are you telling me I can be a general manager one day?" And he really went off there. He believed what he was saying. I never thought he didn't believe what he was saying. You just work hard. I will make sure that everything is, and he did everything he said. And so I made a statement once. I said, "Well, Coach Lombardi lied to me. It's not that easy." And I was sorry I said that, because I was not saying that Lombardi just deliberately lied to me. I was saying Lombardi, what he said to me, turned out not to be true. Therefore, he lied to me.
In March 2003, at age 67, Bobby Mitchell retired from his post as assistant general manager in Washington. In 11 years as a player and 33 years as an executive, he was a man of vision and courage, whose influence extended far beyond the football field.
When you look at your entire sweep of your career, what would you like your legacy to be?
I would like for it to be just written, right under me, right under my chest. The struggle was worth it. Because I have had one of the greatest lives that any man could ever have. My life has been so extraordinary, so beautiful. No matter how I look at it, how I think about it, I wouldn't change a thing. Every person that kicked me in my backside, I want to get that kick again. Yeah, and everybody who hugged me, I want those hugs again. The struggle was worth it.